Rathi Krishnan is on the most important quest in life, discovering her true self-identity.
I think what really actually made me realize that this was the one and only path for me was reading Who Am I?
Ramana Maharshi's landmark teaching of self-discovery. Who am I?
I find that the deeper I get into his teachings, the more I realize that what he says is absolutely true. It resonates in a very deep level where other teachers did not resonate.
Stop looking outside for truth, Ramana Maharshi says. Look inside. Dig deep.
This is such a personal path that you really have to guide it more and more within yourself. You've got to look deeper and deeper and deeper within. And that is where, you find the real truth.
And who is there to guide you in such an important search?
I constantly seek guidance, yes, but more and more I seek the guidance from within and don't let my mind answer the question. I let it come from my heart. It's not something you do in the morning for 20 minutes and the evening for 20 minutes. No, it's not like that. Even that 1 second I might be doing it while I'm cooking may change me for the rest of the day.
And what is there to gain from such a practice? Well, everything.
You're less fearful, you're more at peace, you're much more at peace, and you're less concerned about the future, and you're not dwelling at all on the past. To a large extent, you've let go of your own identity.
And how difficult is all of this? Not at all, says Ramana's followers.
This is the simplest, clearest, most concise teaching there is out there. There's no fluff, there's no muff, there's no jargon, there's nothing there. It's clear, it's simple, it's straightforward.
And as many others say, it turns your life inside out. Welcome to Souljourns.
This interview was recorded on April 25th, 2024, in Los Angeles and San Diego, California.
Mhm.
Rathi Krishnan of Los Angeles, thank you for joining us on Souljourns today. I've been waiting quite a while to put the camera on you so we could pick your mind a little bit about your spiritual path. I do know, Rathi, that you're an ardent follower of Ramana Maharshi. I don't know a whole lot of people in the world who follow him. I know even fewer in America, but I have a sense that list of people is growing. What prompted you to begin your journey on this path?
Ramana Maharishi was known to our family, but I didn't personally, get really close to understanding his teachings and all of that. That came a lot later. But even as early as probably 1970, my grandmother and grandfather who had visited, the ashram when at the time when Paul Brunton was there around 1945, when my uncle was a small baby. And my mother also visited. She was a young girl of about 10 years old. And so they had all gone to Ramanashramam because my grandmother was a very curious type of person. And both she and my grandfather were very keen to find out as much as they could about Ramana Maharishi and his teachings and all of that. But at that point, I didn't know very much and I didn't pay much attention. But it was much later, it was actually only in the early 2000s, I got really interested, and more so after my trip to Tiruvannamalai, actually.
Was that your first and only trip?
Yes, that's been my only trip to Tiruvannamalai, January of 2011, which when I went to
And
Tiruvannamalai.
how did it solidify or even expand your own feelings about being on the right path for you?
I think what really actually made me realize that this was the one and only path for me was reading Who Am I? More than even the visit to the mountain, it was reading Who Am I? And when that seemed to make good sense, I mean, a lot of it was very hard to understand. And to this day, I still keep reading it. And now I'm trying to read it in a bit of Tamil as well. My Tamil is very poor, but I try to read it along in Tamil and use the English translation to help. I find that the deeper I get into his teachings, the more I realize that this is what he says is absolutely true. It resonates in a very deep level where other teachers did not resonate to that level.
Did you grow up with an understanding of Advaita Vedanta, of non-duality? Were you already familiar with that whole spiritual concept?
Not really, actually, very little of it, only to the extent that reincarnation figured in there. but very little of it. I didn't really know very much of all that. No.
Did you come to the point, as I have, that reincarnation is part of the vast dream that we think is real?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, very much so.
So regarding Ramana, how many years would you guess it is that you've been a follower, a devotee, someone enormously interested in practicing what he has to share with others?
I would say really only from about 2010 or 10, 11, around that time. So
And
that's about
and what
20.
about before then? Were you attached to any belief system?
Not any belief system in particular, but in 2007 and 8, there was a very good teacher whom I encountered in the Bay Area. His name was Jim. He's still there. He still teaches. His name is Jim Gilman, and he's a follower of Chinmayananda, and he's Swami Chinmayananda, and he also he what he does is he teaches different texts of Vedanta. So I spent a whole year studying the Bhagavad Gita and Viveka Chudamani under him. But at that time, whatever I learned of that was in 2000, maybe 5 or 6 and 7, around that time. But all that I learned about Advaita Vedanta still didn't fill all the gaps for me in the way that only the exposure to Ramana Maharshi's teachings did. So
Yeah.
they seem to really explain everything in a way that seem to make it fit together holistically as a as a as a cohesive whole, seems to fit together in a way that all the philosophies I read. I mean, in the past I've read some Western philosophy. I was acquainted with earlier on at the age of say 14, I was acquainted with Yogananda's, not Yogananda, who was it? Maharishi Mahesh's yogis, transcendental meditation. So I learned a bit of that. So all of that started with all of that. But all of that was only bits and pieces. They all didn't make sense.
Yeah. Maharishi was adamant about getting on the path of meditation, and TM became famous worldwide. I know back in 1975, I plopped down my $175 to be initiated here in America. And I've never regretted it because I felt sort of a visceral change come over me that I figured must be real, or I wouldn't experience it quite this way before. And I needed it for a very distinct purpose back in those years. Meditation doesn't seem to be played up as much by Ramana and his teachings. He acknowledges it. He says you got to find silence, but he doesn't necessarily open the door only to meditation. Would you agree?
What he does is, I think he was a teacher who was very liberal in the sense that he said, whatever path you're following, continue with that. If that helps you, like if puja helps you, or japa helps you, or meditation helps you, or dhyana helps you, or yoga helps you, follow whatever helps you. But with meditation, he didn't say anything about sitting down for timed meditation the way that that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and other teachers mention and they stress in their teachings. What he really, in fact, what he says is even more useful, because what he emphasizes is being self-attentive 24/7, which is way more, which is a bigger undertaking. I mean, how can you be self-attentive? How can you feel you're being self-attentive 24/7? Although we, like you and I are sitting here, we have some inner feeling of our inner being. Our inner being is present there, right in the background. Somewhere it is present in the background, but it's very much in the background, you see?
Self-attention, the phrase you just used several times, is a synonym for self-investigation, which is a synonym for self-inquiry, which
Yes.
Ramana popularized, maybe I should say repopularized around the world when he was going all the way up to 1950 when he passed away. That is considerably different from meditation. In fact, it might be considered the polar opposite. Do you want to comment on that? It takes work.
It takes work because the emphasis that Bhagwan Ramana places on self-awareness or self-investigation is more the dropping of the ego. So since his emphasis is on the ego, you're really watching your thought to see the appearance of ego, an egoic manifestation in your mind. when you see the manifestation of ego, then you want to quell it. And then you go after it and you quell it. And then, of course, it runs away. When you look at it, stare at it face to face, obviously ego is only a phantom and it does vanish. But ego is always there, ever ready, sitting on your shoulder, ever ready to pop up again and again. But again, I feel it is his emphasis on ego, which is a different type of self-investigation compared to just, being still and just, trying to be with, trying to quieten your thoughts or
Yeah.
silence your thoughts or any of the rest of that.
When you mention ego, I'm always reminded of one of the first things I came across from a Ramana quote that really impressed me, maybe for the wrong reasons, is that look around you. Everything you see, feel, taste, think, and do is ego. Even your breathing is ego. So you don't want to carry it too far, do you? And stop your breathing or anything comparable?
I think the very fact that you're examining it in a way where you're not asking questions about it, but just turning around and examining it, looking at it, staring at it in the face, makes it disappear, and then you're left with a state of being that is your consciousness, the chit, the Sat Chit Ananda, the chit and the Sat Chit Ananda. And when you're face to face with your chit, you realize if you don't need anybody to tell you that is your consciousness. You need no one to tell you that. You know that for sure. And when you feel that and you're immersed in that, that's what you're supposed to be experiencing. You're aware that that's what you're really getting at.
In your own words, what do you think Ramana means by self-inquiry, who am I, all of it combined, constituting the direct path to awakening, to self-enlightenment?
As a direct path, he means that other paths are helpful. They get you there at some point or other. They've all been useful. But the direct path, in the sense that it is the quickest, the speediest approach, is to inquire into that thought, the root thought that keeps coming up at the base of all other thoughts, the I thought, because the I thought is very powerful. And the I thought contains, as we know, an amalgamation of the actual chit, which is the consciousness, as well as the ego, the conflation with the ego. So when you are able to look at it face to face, then the conflated part, the ego part, it gets submerged or it disappears momentarily, perhaps only momentarily, but it leaves you more face to face with your own consciousness, and that way it's a direct path that makes you feel, time and again, it's the easiest, quickest way to get there. But all other paths, in my opinion, are all equally useful in helping you get to this path, and use this path more efficiently and favorably.
There's one aspect of Ramana's teachings, his principal aspect, actually, self-inquiry, self-investigation, asking yourself the question of who am I? In whom are these thoughts occurring? Well, they're occurring in me. Who am I? The people I've talked to over the years, partly because I'm a journalist and I'm curious, and partly because I'm a spiritual seeker and I have a vested interest in the answers that people offer, I get a dozen different answers from a dozen different people about what it really means when you pose what appears to be the question to yourself, who am I? Everything from explicitly expressing it to not saying a word about it and let it conjure up its meanings as they appear in your consciousness. How would you answer that question?
No, you're not supposed to treat it as an examination of the question. It's not a question answer. It's not an interrogation. It's not an inquisition. It's more um, an investigation. An investigation is more where you just where you just examine something wholly without dissecting it into its parts. You don't look into the parts yet. You just examine the whole. In examining the whole, you get to the whole meaning. Whereas if you try to examine the parts, then you might get distracted and you might be sent to divergent paths, like, oh, I'm Rati or I'm Ted, and I'm sitting here, I'm doing this right here, right now, and yeah, I could go and I need to go here later or whatever it is. So you get distracted with all the other thoughts. But
Yeah.
it's only when you when you see it as an examination of that whole state of the I-ness within you, then you're forced to just take it as a whole and not see it as anything, as the bits and pieces, and not even let your analytical mind step in. You don't want your analytical mind to step in there. You want to leave that out of the question, out of the equation.
Yeah.
You don't want that to step in. Although you do use analysis, jnana is an analytical method. So you do use analysis to ask, who am I? That's an analytical question. But the way you do it is, it's more as an examination. It's not a,
Right.
Yeah.
Your answer is far better than the majority of people I ask that question of. However, I have to admit that even at times that I've been doing this for a while, the temptation is there to answer the question. A teacher of mine, Sai Baba, used to talk about when it comes to answering questions like this, you begin by saying, neti, 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 it's not this, it's not that, it's not this. And I've learned to expand that to include everything I think I am, which seems useful to me, but that's not the point. So who are you not, Rati?
Again, I think you don't want to use the neti approach, but rather the iti approach. Iti meaning the it is. What is it that remains when everything is excluded? Or what remains when you don't even look at the excluded part anymore? Like Ramana has this beautiful, one beautiful quotation where he says, rather than examine all the hairs in the barber's salon, all the little hair clippings, you may examine the head, You examine the head, you're examining the haircut, the head. You're not looking at all the clippings. So in that sense, you're looking more, you're not questioning yourself in that analytical manner, which can be very diverting and will lead one elsewhere.
The iti approach. I've never heard that before today. Thank you for expanding my own awareness of this whole process.
Actually, it was Michael James who mentioned that himself. He mentioned iti as opposed to neti. Iti means it is, as opposed to it's not.
Well, he's prolific. I catch as much as I can of him. And of course, he joins us for a full 2 hours once every month on the first Sundays of the month. He's just outstanding for anybody watching this now. Just Google him and you'll find all sorts of wonderful stories and answers to 1,000 questions. And be prepared to have one question deserve a 45-minute answer by him. He's very detailed and very good.
Yes.
Sounds like you've been a fan of his for a long time.
Yes. I feel he's really clarified my knowledge and understanding of Bhagwan's teachings. It's really helped me go much deeper. And I like the fact that he emphasizes so much about sticking and learning from the original teachings of Bhagwan himself and learning more from those teachings, because that is where the real gold is to be found.
He's done so much to reinvigorate those who have an interest in knowing who they are, which is frankly why I'm here. Because since my childhood, I've asked that question of myself over and over again. Has that ever bothered you or troubled you, knowing who Rati is?
Yeah, it seems that all the other answers were insufficient. I wasn't my persona. I wasn't my identity. I wasn't my name. I wasn't my form. I mean, the form and the name keep changing, as from birth to youth to old age. I mean, it keeps changing. You're changing all the time. Your personality even is changing all the time. So everything is transient. So, but there is, through all of that, there's always the same I am that inhabited this particular body of Ted or of Rati. And that particular I am is something that that will resonate with you no matter which part of your memory you look back into. I mean, you look back into that, there you'll know that, oh yes, I was there. I mean, you refer to that I, which I was it that was there? You'll know that I was something that had nothing to do with external form. So that had nothing to do with the name or the form or the appearance or the identity or any of that. And since, we place so much importance on identity and form and all of that, and in almost every other approach, in philosophical approach, so much is made of all of that. This is refreshing in Ramana's Bhagwan's teachings, to know that that is the primary, that's where that's what you need to attack first. You first need to go and attack that identity which you thought was whole and complete and you believed in and trusted in.
Oh, yeah. I first learned that in 1989 when I picked up the book called A Course in Miracles, which is really the first in-depth introduction to Advaita Vedanta, non-duality in America, in the West. And I was not believing, although I stayed with it for 26 years. It was a long time before I decided I was going to choose to tie my name to this path, my illusory name, because it was just too overwhelmingly different in the way I was raised to believe. But I suspect a lot of people who come today to Ramana's teachings already have a foothold, perhaps, in the field of non-duality, and then he takes them maybe all the way home. Which leads to two quick questions I want to ask you right now. I hope you answer the first one, and you can take a pass on the second one. Are you familiar, being with Ramana's teachings this long, with anybody who, in your estimation, has arrived at awakening to a certain degree in that they seem to know the truth of who they really are?
There was a time when I might have been interested in conjectures like that, but now more and more I know that even when I can delude myself about myself and about my own identity, I mean, how much less I know about other people or their identities. Or leave aside their identities. Let even know what they seem to be, whether they're authentic or not. So again, I see, and this is something very important, I feel, is to not pay too much attention to the world or the other people in it or what other teachers are doing. Or this is such a personal path that you really have to guide it more and more within yourself. You've got to look deeper and deeper and deeper within. And that is where, you find the real truth, enough for you to have the belief that you don't need to look anywhere else.
Yeah, thank you very much for putting me in my place. That question comes from the journalist in me. If you have a question, ask it and find out what the answer is. It's a wonderful answer. And the second question, I think, is something you might have an interesting view on too, from the journalist perspective. How far along are you when you consider your own effort at becoming awakened?
I don't see it as something where there's going to be an end point where when I reach that point, I can say, aha, I'm there now. It's not a point where I'm going to be able to say I've arrived. It's not such a point. It's a point that's an ongoing point that continues because I know I'm not there at all. I know that for all my years of interest in philosophy, both Western and Borges, and my interest in literature and my interest in all that I've read, all that I've studied, all that I've focused on, the transcendental meditation, the other teachers, and some of the fake gurus I've had along the way, and some of the genuine gurus I've had, like Jim Gilman, who taught us about Vedanta and all of that. I know ultimately, the more you go deeper into it, you realize it's nothing much to do with the world. You really have to go deeper and deeper within.
Yeah.
I think, the first sign you'll see is that you're willing to surrender more and more. At least there's a willingness. There's a willingness to say, look, I don't know much about this, but I'm willing to leave it all to the Almighty. I'm willing to surrender it to the Almighty. And in doing that, that is where I find that for me personally, I need to use both surrender and self-inquiry. So there are often times when surrender doesn't, when self-inquiry, it's hard to do self-inquiry. And that time, surrender seems to be the best way to go, where I can tell myself, no, let me just accept the situation. Let me just accept everything as it is.
In all fairness, in my experience and my exposure to teachings about Ramana Maharshi, wasn't around during his actual teachings, but surrender seems to get short shrift compared to self-inquiry. I'm not quite sure why. I don't know that as many people know enough about it as you do, as you seem to. So can you elaborate upon that one more time? That might be eye-opening for some people.
Surrender again, as taught by Ramana, Bhagwan is really the surrendering of one's ego. So both paths are really the same path. There's not really a difference here between surrendering one's ego or saying, I accept the will of God. Ultimately, in saying I accept the will of God, I accept the will of the Almighty, or I take myself out of this equation, in doing that, who do you take out of the equation? Your ego. So really, once you take the ego out of the equation, you're out. You're completely out of it, you know. But the ego is such a pesky thing. It keeps coming back. Ego comes back all the time. And how does ego come back? How do you know egos come back? It's always with the little fears, with the sense of inadequacy, or with the feeling that, oh, oh my God, this is going to happen, or well, I don't know if I'm ready for this right now. Like life always seems to be like more and more challenging as you go along. It's interesting. It's as if it's one of those it's one of the adventure games where the challenges are even more demanding, where you have to make bigger and bigger challenges, face bigger and bigger challenges, and be able to say at every point, I'm willing to let go. I'm willing to let go of this ego of mine. I know my ego is in the way. I know it's my persona that's in the way. If I could just get rid of that persona, that identity, that Rati, then I've gotten rid of all my problems. I have no other problems to worry about.
Rati, I can't tell you how much I enjoy conversing with you. This is the first time we've been able to do it in this particular venue, but I think of you as a person who's most knowledgeable. The answers just roll right off of your mind, your consciousness, the tip of your tongue with great ease. It makes me wonder, don't you already know the answers to every concern that comes up?
I know, but there can't be a topic that's more fascinating, because you can always go deeper. You can get deeper and deeper clarity. Like, why does even Michael James enjoy discussing this over and over and over with everybody, all the fellow devotees that we come across? Because he enjoys refining it for himself. I think more than anything, he enjoys being able to refine it, not just for others, but in his own mind. He's approaching it in such a refined way, in such a subtle and sophisticated, and so subtly, going so subtly into it, that it resonates even better for him, not just for himself, because there's already a point where all this resonated with us a long time ago. When I read Who Am I, they say Who Am I, it had already resonated, and already I was completely sold to Bhagwan Ramana's path and his teachings. But the battle isn't over yet. The battle is still always lies ahead, because as long as one is alive, almost, I mean, at what point can one ever say that, yes, I've surrendered? Oh, yes, I've arrived. There's nothing like that. There's nothing where one can say, I mean, if I'm there to say I've arrived, then I won't be there at all to even say it. I wouldn't even be able to say it. If I truly had arrived, I wouldn't be there able to say it even, would I? So that is why there is nobody left there to say that I'm a jnani or I've arrived. That isn't there. So you have to really say that I'm on this path as much as everybody else. And yes, you definitely feel that way too. I know that every now and then, if I think I'm making progress, I also know I'm taking a lot of steps back. I'm also taking some backward steps. And how do I know that? If I'm afraid about something trivial, I know how trivial it is. A part of my mind tells me this is very trivial, but another part is telling me, no, be scared, So, so then you realize that no, it's not something one should be scared about. But telling oneself is not the answer. It goes back again into the self-inquiry. So again, one has to do the practice self-investigation. And again, it's a 24/7 business. It's not something you do in the morning for 20 minutes and the evening for 20 minutes, and the rest of the day you go around your merry self saying, I go around my merry Rati doing whatever Rati always cared about. No, it's not like that. Even that 1 second I might be doing it while I'm cooking may change me for the rest of the day enough to feel that those other things were trivial. Let me not focus on this or on that. Let me focus on this instead. Go ahead. What were you saying?
I was going to say, surely you must have close friends and relatives and former coworkers or current coworkers who must know that there's something going on in Ranti's life that carries her distant from where they may be in their own view. if they ever muster up the courage to say, what is it that makes you so obsessed, so preoccupied with this path you're on? In all fairness to them, how might you answer those questions? And does the question ever come up?
Question does come up. And when some people say, you seem too obsessed, and my mother has told me, you seem too obsessed. And then my question I didn't, of course, because one never questions one's mother. So you don't have one doesn't question one's mother, but you always say, oh no, you might just laugh it off. But what you really feel is, no, there's no such thing as being obsessed about something that's become uh, your life's business, your 24/7 business, to know this and to get this straight. I've reached a point where all I know is, if you ask me the question before how to answer that, how do I know how far I'm gone on this path? Yeah, I know I'm gone because I'm really gone. I'm a goner. I'm such a goner here on this path because, in the sense that don't want to let anything else distract me from it. I'm not interested in all the worldly things that people are generally interested in. Like, I don't watch movies. I'm not too interested. I'm less and less interested in the news. I know that even the little snippets I get keep me aware of maybe what's going on with elections or what. But all that is taking on a peripheral. It's all in the background. It's all background noise, which is not important at all.
Rati, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to bring up a subject in particular that you may prefer to talk about from your end regarding Ramana Maharshi. Do you have anything?
I think the only thing that I'm always a little puzzled by is when people seem to say they don't know what self awareness is, or they don't seem to know what self attention is. And when they seem to ask that question, sometimes when they seem to be asking, not me personally, because I'm not in any way, the teacher to be asked such questions. But when I notice at meetings, when people seem to be doubtful about what self awareness is or what self attention is, that seems to be a little puzzling to me, because I would think that it's almost the de facto state of being that we're all very familiar with. Or maybe I think the one question, yes, that is well worth maybe bringing up is, people are often wonder, how can I practice this 24/7? How do I do this 24/7 when I have other things in my mind, or when other things keep coming up where I have to, how do I reconcile karma, for instance? How do I reconcile action with what appears to be non-action? But I think there where it's gotten clarified for me, and where it's well worth knowing, is that one doesn't stop doing. Doing continues. But what ends really is that you take away the sense of doership. You take away the sense that I'm the doer. The egoistic attachment to either the fruits of your labor or the labor itself in any form or fashion is what you let that go. When you let that go, then you're free to act in the world, because you're anyway going to act. And as even Michael James or anybody has pointed out, you will, mind, body, and speech continue with their action. Speech and body with its own actions, and mind with its thoughts. Everything continues as before. However, what seems to be different, or what is new, is that you've let go of the sense of doership. You're no more at the center stage anymore as a doer.
And that can't be stressed enough, can it? Because we all think we're in control of our own destiny.
Yeah, I think the whole debate on destiny and free will is a very big one. And again, one has to really see that ultimately, everything is predestined. Pretty much everything is predestined. However, that doesn't mean we don't have the ability to exercise our will. We do have will, and we know we can exercise our will in this particular respect, which is to know that, do I wish to practice self-attention now, or not practice self-attention now? So in that major respect, we can exercise our will. And that's the only place where we should and we have to exercise our will.
How much has this path, being on this path for, it sounds like it's been around 11 or 12 years, maybe 13 years, how much has it changed your life?
I think it's changed my life to the extent more and more where I'm not in center stage anymore, as doing everything in that sense. And I'm also a little less concerned with the outcome of events. I don't worry so much about the events going on as, because I know I have no control over them, no handle over any of that. So that'll all continue as is meant to happen.
Many people think that if a person, even a Ramana person, asks for guidance to be led in their correct perspective, the guidance might be forget about the outcome. That's too dualistic, and they don't encourage it. Do you ever seek guidance for anything that's on your mind, not just spiritually, but in your illusory life in general?
Yeah, I constantly seek guidance. Yes, I constantly do. But more and more, I seek the guidance from within. So what happens more and more is I seek the answers from within. Rather than look outside for those answers, I pose the answer to myself and don't let my mind answer the question. I let it come from my heart.
The object of your question is directed at yourself, your inner self, I would imagine, which I think makes it non-dualistic, because you're not going outside of yourself, you're going to yourself.
Yes. I think the extent to which you learn to trust your inner judgment comes more from being the longer you're on this path and the deeper you've gone in on this path, So it's more to do with that.
A lot of people tell me it sounds like it's just too much work, Ted. Has it been that for you? Is it actually difficult to maintain the speed and rate of self-exploration you've been doing on this path?
I mean, over the years, there have been times when I have, gotten distracted and done lots of other things, done other things in the sense that not being actively pursuing the path in the sense of, being a little bit distracted, not being, taking that seriously. But invariably, I'm always drawn back to it because it just comes back to me as the only answer.
Yeah.
The only answer to I am. If you want an answer for I am, the only answer for how to be in this world with I am is to be with the I am. The more and more one is with the I am, that answers everything. That answers all one's questions, all one's pursuits, all one's need for goals. That we don't have the same goals as other people. We don't have a sense of, I need to do this X and Y, or I need to achieve this and this today. You don't have a sense. It's more free flowing, in the sense that you're letting it go,
Recommend anybody who wants to join you on this path, who have just been thinking about it, but they haven't committed themselves yet, to any other particular books, though, other than the ones you mentioned, or videos, or talks, or seminars that might help broaden their understanding of everything that you're talking about?
I feel that all these are what, basically Bhagwan Ramana's teachings are themselves the most valuable. Next to his, I like certain practitioners there's one who speaks a lot in Tamil, but he also speaks in English. I mentioned his name to Marty, by the way. His name is Nochur Venkatraman. He's a Swamiji now. He's taken sannyasi. He's a Swamiji. He lives in Tiruvannamalai. And he talks a lot in Tamil, but he's actually from Malayali. He's actually from Kerala. But at the same time, he's well versed in Tamil. He speaks well in English too. If you can find his Aksharamanammalai, I'll send you the link. I'll actually send you one of the links to his talks in English. And then, you can listen to some of his talks in English. He's very good. There's also another Swami, Swarupananda, but it's not a question of finding anybody, but in a sense of you finding the answers within. You have to ultimately look for that. The answers are all right there within. It's not as if we can find an external teacher here to help us. And if the external teacher takes center stage for any reason, one needs to be careful of that as well, because you don't want to be guided by a teacher who's going to make demands on you or say things that don't seem right to you. You don't want to have that. And who can be a better guru than Bhagwan Ramana himself? So you want to more and more, and this is what I try to do now. I try to align myself more and more with his own presence there, with his presence within me, and try to always reach out to that for the answers. So if I'm looking for an answer for something with cooking or something practical, I might say, well, what would Bhagwan Ramana be? What would Bhagwan be doing now? How would he have approached this? And then that'll usually give me an answer, which is not necessarily something I could do, but at least it's an answer that would be something acceptable that I would like to listen to or like to know.
I think what you're talking about is, I would phrase it as gains made along the path. It isn't all work and no play. You do find answers. You do find guidance. You do find guidance that pans out. It opens up to the whatever the desire you might have about a question on this path or any path in this illusory lifetime. Doesn't that really set this practice apart from many others? Because you gain as you go along.
You definitely make the gains, and you know you made the gains when you know certain things happen. You're less fearful, you're more at peace, you're much more at peace, and you're less concerned about the future, and you're not dwelling at all on the past. And you've let go of, to a large extent, you've let go of your own identity to as much as is possible. As much as is possible, in living within one sense of this world where your identity is called into question at every point. Despite that, that is only something that your name and form that you need to present to people that they need that information from you. But you know you're not that, and you don't focus on that at all. So that really begins to happen.
Whoever coined the phrase, we're all actors on the stage of life, certainly know what they were talking about. And you start to see that in crystal clarity the longer you're on this path, I think.
I think so, you're right. I think you can, what I'm saying here makes sense to you because you've been long enough on this path for you to feel that, you can agree with all of these things. Like, for instance, I was on this path right from age 14, really, when around the time my grandmother and we discussed my uncle's passing, my dear uncle who had passed away of snake bite. And, he was the one that had gone to the Tiruvannamalai and all of that. So, she had been drawn to that path. And at that point, she was really seeking answers. But at that point, all that resonated with me when I was 14 or 15 was that this world is a dream. This must be a nightmare, I felt. If these sort of things can happen, if beloved people can just disappear, vanish, like that, then this must surely be a nightmare or a dream that you can't trust anymore. So to that extent, that is the only aspect of Vedanta which is reverberated. But even that has been internalized much more recently in the sense of knowing that this is very much a dreamlike quality that life has to it, you see?
You really hit it on the head, I think. Rathi Krishnan, thank you very much for being with us today. I want to give you a minute or so to wrap things up, if you choose to, with a parting comment that might be just a ticket for somebody who's looking for one more nugget of wisdom about joining this path with you.
I think that it's a wonderful blessing that one feels, that one is even drawn to Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi's path, because his is the simplest, clearest, most concise teaching there is out there. There's no fluff, there's no muff, there's no jargon, there's nothing there. It's clear, it's simple, it's straightforward, and you can accept it, and you can go deeper into it in order to accept it. And here you will find everything you ever need to find in terms of answers or in terms of a guidebook as to how to live one's life.
That's excellent, just superb. Rathi, thank you very much for joining us today on Souljourns. Much love to you, much success, and hope to see you again one day soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.